to the podcast version of 32 Bar Cut, the show, a series for performers, about performers, made by performers. Every week, we give audition advice, share personal experiences, and sit down with fellow colleagues in the performing arts to chat about their life in the industry. If you are hearing this message, you are not currently a subscriber and will only be hearing the first half of the podcast. If you would like to hear the full interview, including the curtain call series, you'll want to head over to 32barcut.com, where you can find a link to our Patreon page. There you will have exclusive access to the entire video and private RSS podcast feed, as well as other subscriber-only content. Thanks for listening. Without further ado, on to the show.
You may have seen him waving through a window, but you will soon see him on the Disney reboot of High School Musical, the series. But today he is sitting down with us to chat about his life as a performer. Welcome to the show, Roman Banks.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. Also, that was the coolest intro I've ever heard. Thank you. That was amazing.
Awesome. I'm so glad you enjoyed the intro that we created. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really great. It's like I woke up to a bunch of texts about people being like, it's so pretty outside, it's so warm, and I was like, oh my gosh. I think it's like the highest day we've had in New York so far this year. 60 It's like 62 outside. So I'm like, hey, if there's good vibes around me, there's good vibes in here as well. So I'm doing good.
Yeah, absolutely. I missed out. I normally walk our dog in the morning, and Austin took her this morning because I wasn't feeling my best. And now I'm like, oh man, today was a good walking day. I missed out on that.
I think it's supposed to get literally 2 to 3 degrees warmer this week. So you got a second chance.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad that you're getting good vibes from wherever you are in New York. We're over in Brooklyn, so it is nice. I'm looking out the window and it is pretty nice. And so before we started the interview, you and I were chatting a bit, and you just wrapped something pretty cool, which we're going to talk about in the curtain call.
Cool.
So I'm excited to chat about that. But you came on the scene a few years ago as the first ever Black Dear Evan Hansen, and I will be so grateful when we don't have first ever Black anything, but we're still moving towards that. But I'd love to hear about that audition experience. I heard the story already at our Broadway Plus concert, but I would love to hear it again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was a huge fan of the show. We had heard, my friend and I had heard about it, being on Broadway. And it was so funny. The first time I'd ever heard about it, I was in New York. And this is a story I actually don't tell that much. I was in New York with my best friend. His name's Logan Smith. He took me to New York. I couldn't afford a trip. It was to go audition for colleges, for musical theater programs specifically. And he had bought tickets to 2 Broadway shows. One of those was Waitress, which ended up being my first show because he took me with him. And then one of those was Dear Evan Hansen. And I remember he went to go see it, and he came back, and we were like, how's the show? And he was like, he was like, Ben Platt's going to win the Tony. It's going to win Best Musical. It's so amazing. And I was just like, yeah, sure. Like, what? Because I had never seen a Broadway show. I didn't know what that was like. And I was just like, yeah, sure. Like, okay, whatever. But I wasn't dismissing it, but I was just like, it just sounded like a lot of okay, you just love theater. And of course it was so amazing. And obviously that was before that was literally this was January and the show had just opened maybe a few weeks ago. And so he was really part of the early crowd. But anywho, once the cast album dropped, it was the summertime, and I just remember I was with my friend, and we were like, we're going to put it on the car and we're just going to listen to it. Cause it had been getting so much hype. Ben had been getting so much praise in the news. And we knew it was Pasek and Paul. And we had already, I think that year we were working on James and the Giant Peach, which is a small show that they wrote that gets licensed a lot to junior theaters. And so we were like, oh, we love James and the Giant Peach. We can't wait to hear this. So we turned it on, and it was just man, I remember we were in his driveway and we let the car seats back down, and we were just like, this is incredible music. And And that really began my obsession with it. And I just remember I finally got to see it in November of 2017, I want to say. And I saw Ben, and I was just like a kid at Christmas. Like I was like, and so I was just like, man, this is amazing. And then like obviously the more I saw the cast, I was like, yo, this is a really white show. And it reinforced the idea that I thought Broadway, like growing up, I didn't want to do Broadway. When I realized I wanted to be an actor, I did not want to do Broadway because I was like, Broadway is for white people. It's like I don't sing like that. I don't dance like that. That's just not for me. And I never even thought more of it. I was just like, Broadway's for white people. And then this show, like, it was Hamilton that changed my opinion on that matter, but it was like this show that I like saw myself in. And I don't have anxiety, like I don't struggle with that very much, but it was just like the idea of like feeling isolated within a group space. And for Evan, that experience is like in school, and for me that was like being a part of theater. Like I was always Oh, sorry. I was always like the only black kid in this theater group. Or I was like the only black kid in this theater group. Or I was the only black kid in this performance or something. And it felt like it was like a joke of mine. But at the center of it, I was like, I don't want that to be the case. And so I tweeted Ben Platt, and I was like, could there ever be a black Evan Hansen asking for a friend? And I thought nothing of it, you know. I was like, you know, by the time there's a black Evan Hansen, I was in my first year of college. I was like, someone else will have done that by the time I leave. And yeah, I just kind of went on about my day, and I just dreamed about it. I was super obsessed with the show. I had watched the bootleg so many times. Sorry, not sorry. Um, and yeah, it was like a few months later, we head into 2018. I'm in my second semester at Shenandoah Conservatory in Virginia. And I saw the open call through Tara Rubin's Facebook page. And I was like, oh my God, and Evan has an open call. I'd love to go. We were about like a 4-hour drive from New York. And I emailed them, and I was like, are you guys considering black people for this role? And they were like, yes, we're considering all ethnicities. And I was like, oh, okay, well, cool. I want to audition. And so I told the head of our program I was auditioning, and he was like, be careful. And I was like, okay. And so luckily there was a senior at our school who had been going in for auditions, and had been getting a few callbacks, and people at the school were really excited for him because they're like, yo, he might just do this. And he was going up to audition for them separately. And we were like, can we ride with you? And he was like, yeah. So he drove us up the night before. We stayed at his friend's house in New Jersey. I like slept on the guy's couch, and we took the ferry over super early in the morning. And we waited in line for like 4 hours. There were like 500 people there that day. I was like number like I want to say like 325, 335. I think I counted like 5 black kids there that day. So many blue polos. And they like so many people in blue polos. And yeah, I went in, I sang 16 bars of a song by Georgia Stitt called Prepared. And I left, and I thought I was proud of, you know, my work. And I was just like, you know, now it is what it is. And then the next day I was in a master class at my school for the seniors in our program, and I got a call back on my phone, and I could not believe it was for Jared. And I was just like, what? Like, huh? Like, I just remember like scream. I was like looking to the left and my right. I was like, yeah. And they were like, oh my God. And then my roommate was sitting with like 2 seats down from me, and he got a call back from Evan. And I was a little jealous. I was like, why did he get a call back? Oh, whatever. I was like, whatever. But he was like, we were both super excited. Everyone was like, oh my God, you guys got called back. So it was a self-tape callback. I think that was my first ever self-tape, now that I think about it. And I had a friend who was like getting into camera equipment world, and like my self-tape was clean. Like I had a white backdrop, like 1080p high def camera. I had the little mic on my shirt. Like I was coming to you with the quality. And so we ran through the scenes. I felt really good about them, and we ran through the song. I sent it off. My roommate had to send us some stuff for Evan. We ended up getting called back again, both of us, to go to New York. I go to New York. I'm like looking at his sides while he's in the shower. I'm like singing, waving through a window in my voice lessons because I'm like, yo, I want to play Evan. Like, that's who I feel most closely connected to in this show. Like, I know that's inside of me. I want the opportunity to showcase that should there be one. And meanwhile, I don't think he ever knew. I don't think he ever knew that I was like looking at his stuff. He might know now, but anywho, we take a bus back up to New York. We stay on one of my friend's couches, and we go in. And at the time, I didn't know who Michael Greif was, director of Rent, huge deal. He was in the room, and I went through all my Jared sides, and they were like, good stuff, good stuff. And I was like, thank you. And then they were like, Michael Greif was like, do you know any Evan material? And I always tell people it's like that moment in a movie where like someone sees like the love of their life and like time slows down and it like zooms in and like they see like the white light and their eyes light up. Like that was what it was for me. Like I was like, yo, everything I've ever like dreamed of, manifested in that simple question could be like the door to like my dream coming true. And so all that flashed in my head, and I didn't want to come off too confident because that would have been a little weird. And I was like, I know my way around it. And then they were like, you know your way around it. And I was like, yes, I am familiar with the Evan material. And then they were like, okay. They were like, let's do Waving Through a Window. And I was like, okay. And I just remember like the first chorus, like dun 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 dun. Like I just remember feeling like this is it. Like this is the moment. Like you get to do this. You get to show them what you feel inside of yourself. Like all you have to do is show them what you feel. And I was just like, let's go. Like I was so excited. They probably knew I was like looking at it a little bit because like they were like, let's do Waving Through a Window. And I was like, do you want the audition cut or do you want the full version? And then they were like, the audition cut. And I was like, gotcha. Like I was ready. You were not going to catch me slipping with this dream. And I did it. And they were like, I saw them like talking to each other, like whispering while I was singing. And then they were like, let's do the first monologue. And I had the paper in my hand and I was like reading through. And then they were like, how far away are you? And I was like, oh, I'm just like a 4-hour bus ride. And then they were like, like I literally said it like that. And they were like, okay, well, we want to see you soon. We want to see you read for both these characters again. And I was just like I remember running outside, call my mom. I was like, Mom, you'll never believe what just happened. They asked me to read for Evan. It went well. They want to see me again. Like I got a call back on the spot. And like within an hour of that, I had like an email telling me like the next time I was going to come back. I mean, like it was, I could not comprehend it. So, and by the way, it was like Snowmageddon in New York that day. Like it was, my feet were frozen, but like you could not kill my vibe that day. Anywho, like a week later, 2 weeks later, I come back. I come and audition for Evan and Jared. I was the only person like in the room that was auditioning for 2 people. So they didn't know where to put me. So like I showed up at like 9 a.m. My audition was like for 10 a.m. I don't think I got seen till like 1:30.
Whoa.
And I kept seeing so many people go ahead of me. And I was like, if you're reading for Jared and you're reading for Evan, like why can't they just call me in and like I read for both of them or I like bridge both of them and I leave. But they were like, I ended up getting lunch with like the boys that I was there with. Like it was so weird. I was there much longer than I expected to be. This is also the most in-depth I've ever gone in about my audition process. And we come back. I'm like, man, when am I going to go in? And one of the ladies running the whole thing comes to me and she's like, hey, today's a crazy day. I don't know if we're going to see you for Evan. So just go in and do your Jared stuff and like, we'll find another time. And I was like, okay, sure. I mean, I've only been here for like 4 hours, but okay. I go in and they were like, all right, Roman, we're going to start with the Jared stuff. And I was like, cool. And then they were like, scene 1. And I did scene 1. And they literally like, they were like, scene 2. And I was like, cool. And they're like, great, good for you. And I was like, okay, cool. And they were like, can we do the first Evan side? And I was like, sure. And like, cool. I ended it. They were like, great. Can we do the second side? I was like, cool. They're like, great. Can we do Words Fail? I was like, cool. They're like, can we do Waving Through a Window? I was like, cool. They're like, can we do the scene with your mom? I was like, cool. Like literally it was There was no feedback in between. It was literally like scene 1, scene 2, this song, this scene, this song, this song. And then I finished and they were like, great, thank you. And that's lit. And then I walked out and I was like, what just happened? Like I think I was in there for like 20 minutes, but it was so back and forth. It was the first time I've ever like cried in an audition. So I was like proud of myself because like I was like, living out the material, I guess. And I left and it was such a blur that I really didn't know how I did, besides like the fact that I was like successfully had cried in an audition. And then I left and like the people outside were like, oh, you sounded great. And I was like, really? Thank you so much. And I like made a journal about it and I like updated all the people who were like dying to hear how that day went. And I went home and I was like, regardless of what happened, I was extremely prepared. I didn't mess up on anything. And I was like, I know that if they don't go with me, it wasn't because of my lack of preparation. So I go home and I was used to hearing about auditions up until that point between like 24 to 48 hours after my audition. Mm-hmm. So that time passed and I was like, okay. And then like 72 hours passed and I was like, all right, that's a little weird. And then like a week passed and I was like, oh my God. And then it was 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months.
2 months.
2 months. No word, no email, text, nada. I was like, all right. Like I had moved on. I had accepted it. I was like, I tried my best. It didn't work out. That's fine with me. And I'm reading the breakdown for like literally it was some I forget the name of those types of theaters, but it was a theater doing like the first all Black Oklahoma production. Mm-hmm. And I was just like reading the breakdown for it because I think once I had gone in for Dear Evan Hansen, a few other people, I think through Tara Rubin's casting, had like given me breakdowns for stuff. And I'm reading it, and I had already had a summer job lined up. I had a trip to London lined up, non-refundable, by the way. Uh-oh. And they call me, and I get a call from New York. And I was like, yo, this can only be Evan Hansen. There's no one else calling me from New York for no reason. So I like see it. I look at my phone. I'm like, oh my God. And I reach down to my iPad and I press record because I was like, this has to be a good conversation. And they're like, is this Roman Banks? And I was like, mm-hmm. And they're like, okay. And then they were like, and then they invited me back to New York for like this Evan intensive where they were like, we want to spend a few days with you, take you to see the show, and like, audition you again. And I was like, no, like I was just like blown away. They're like, we'll send over the email stuff tonight. I ran to my best friend's room. He was in the shower. I was like, you have to let me in. He's like, why would I was like, I can't tell you, just let me in. I ran in his place. I'm like, yo, like, I got a call back. He was like, what? I was like, yeah, I got a call back. They want to like take me out to New York, like stay there for a few days. He's like, what? We were like crying. I was like telling everyone under the sun, not everyone under the sun, but like, the close family and friends that I had kept updated throughout the process. We went to Chick-fil-A to celebrate. It was a great night. And I go back to New York. I'm auditioning. Right? We go see the show. They're like, can we work your Jared sides back in? I'm like, okay. So I'm like doing Evan and Jared sides. I'm like there with like 5 other boys. I'm the only one doing Jared sides. They're like, we heard you doing Jared sides. What was that about? And I was like, oh, like that's just how I started the audition process. They just wanted to see how that was, like recheck up on it. I was lying. They told me specifically not to tell those other boys that I was doing Jared sides. And then literally the day before my audition, like, they introduced the Connor sides to me. And then they were like, can you just read it? And I was like, okay. I'm not a Connor, but okay. They're like, can you just read it? And I read it and they were like, cool, we want you to audition with these tomorrow. And like this whole process, I had been sitting with material for like weeks, workshopping it with teachers, other students of mine, memorizing it to a T. And I was like, okay. And so the other boys were like going out that night. I still had to keep this secret from them. And I was like, I can't really go out tonight, but y'all stay fine. I just want to get my rest. And then they were like, oh, okay, we'll see you tomorrow. And I was like, okay. And I'm at home like trying to memorize these sides. And I was like, oh my gosh, like how am I gonna like separate all this stuff in my brain? I go in the next day. They're auditioning us one by one in the hallway. I audition. I read for Evan, Connor, and Jared. I come outside. They're like, oh, and I was staying. And then all the other boys were leaving. And they're like, why are you staying? And I was like, oh, they wanted to see something again. I don't know. And then they bring me back in. I do the whole audition completely over again because they recorded it that time. No pressure. And then I leave. And then Tara Rubin's like, we'll see you soon. And I was like, oh, I was like, see me soon. I was like, yo. So I'm like on cloud nine. I go back home. It's summertime by that time. By the way, to make this trip, I had to miss my London trip. So yeah, I was like, ooh, okay. All right. Okay. I go back home. They're like, yo, we want to see you in 2 weeks with this material. And it was crazy. They were like, you're going to come in, you're going to do a 30-minute audition with the associate team. And then you're going to do an hour-long audition with the entire team. And I was like, bruh, oh, I got to warm up, man. So I fly back to New York. I've been rehearsing my butt off those 2 weeks I was at home. A lot of like voice lesson over FaceTime with my teacher from school. And I go in Pearl Studios and they had rented out the entire floor. And I was like, yo, what? Like I had never seen it like that in my life. And they were like, go to this room. It'll have your name under it. And I expected it to be under Roman Banks, but it was under Dear Evan Hansen. And right then I was like, yo, like I already feel like a part of this show. Like they didn't put it under my name. They put it under their name. And I went in there and I warmed up and I did the 30-minute audition. And then I like came back and then they called me in. Like Alex Lacamoire was there. I was a huge fan of Hamilton. So I was like pissing my pants inside. Pasek and Paul walked by me. I fell off a bench when I went to go shake hands. No, I fell off a bench and then and then Benj Pasek came around the corner and he was like, I didn't see that. And I was like, thank God. And he helped me up. That was literally the first time I ever met Ben Pasek. I go inside and there's like 14, from what I know to be like basically very well off people, all lighter complexion or just white people behind. Yeah, it's just 14 white people behind the table, this huge room, and just me. And I had like full afro back then. Like I was just like, wow. And they were like, okay, like let's start with Waving Through a Window. And I was like, I like couldn't even look at the table. I remember the first 30 seconds of the song, I couldn't look at the table. I had to like look in the upper corner of the room because I was just so nervous. I was like, this is such an intimidating room. One, because I know like this is it. Like I either get the job after this or I don't. Mm-hmm. And I had seen like when I was in the associate audition, I had seen like 2 other like headshots on the sheet. So I was like, oh, it's between me and 2 other guys. So I auditioned and it was a long audition. But I was in a very calm space. And I thank God for that. And I go outside and there's like 2 like 40-year-old white men on the bench. And I was like, hold on a second. I was like, it was me and 2 other headshots on that list. I was like, are they only seeing me today? I was like, did I already get the job? I was like, was this just like a confirmation type of meeting? Because they were like, wait outside. And I was like, I already did everything. I was like, I know they don't want to see me sing again. So I'm out there for 20 minutes. I'm texting everyone. I'm like, yo, this could be it. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Stacey Mindich comes outside. She's like, walk with me. I'm like, okay. She like pulls me over to the desk and she's like, we would like to welcome you as the Evan, Connor, Jared position here with us on Broadway. And I was like, huh? And then she was like, and we would need you here in 2 weeks. And I was like, I remember I like grabbed the desk behind me and I was like, what? And then she was like, I know. She was like, take your time. Xavier's going to run this thing down with you and then call your mom. And I was like, okay. And I just remember I was like, I had to like act all like cool because they were like breaking it down for me. And then I was just like, I'm about to scream. I need a place to scream. And I go in the elevator and I was like, okay, I finally get to scream as soon as these doors close. Right as the doors are closing, Stephen Levison, who wrote the book for Dear Evan Hansen, like walks in the elevator and he was like, hey. And I was like, hey. And then he was like, pretty nice job back there. And I was like, thanks. And I was like, all the while, it's like, wow, Stephen Levison's in the elevator with me. But I was also like, I need to scream, man. Like, you couldn't have waited for the next elevator? Oh my God. So I completely go through the motions. I go off the elevator with him. I walk outside with him. I'm like, have a good day. He's like, have a good day. I'm like, cool. I turn right back around. I go right back in the elevator and I just press the top floor. And I was just like, I'm going to scream now. And I just like screamed and I was jumping up and down. It opened at the top floor. I stopped screaming. It closed again. I screamed all the way back down. And then I just called my mom and I just started going through my call list. And I was like, you're never going to believe this. They just offered me the job on the spot. And like, there were so many tears on the phone. And I walked in front of the theater and I was just like looking. I was like, I'm going to be working here. Like, this is going to be my job. I didn't even know what an understudy was. I was just like lit. And that was how I got the job. And I mean, I've literally never gone into depth that much with the story before, but that's how my dream came true. I went home. I didn't find a place in 2 weeks. I was in a hotel my first week at Evan Hansen. And then I slept on my auntie's couch the second week. And then by the grace of God, I finally found a place in East Harlem. But yeah, I like packed up my life at 19 and I moved to New York with like no friends, no family, just like $1 in a dream, you know? So a few dollars in a dream. And yeah, that's how the journey began.
That is such an amazing story.
Thank
and what
you.
I love most about it, honestly, is your spirit about the whole thing. Like, you had vision. Yeah. You had vision the whole from the get-go. You had vision, like sneaking your roommates' sides. You know, you're like, no, this is for me though. Like, I get it, but this is for me.
Right.
And you kept that the whole time. I mean, honestly, to wait 2 months to hear anything is extensive and it can drive somebody crazy. Yeah. But what I love is that you were still expecting, because it's like you knew. No, this is for me. It's very clear to me that this is in my future. I'm just waiting for y'all to realize that, and then we can all come together. Yeah.
I mean, that's how it's got to be. Like, I'm not trying to have another kid like me grow up and be in his theater class and think, I don't want to do this because this is for white people. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to break that down. But like, white people think this is for white people. So like, you gotta walk in there like, I forget who, I think it was Audra McDonald who was like, auditioning is like, oh, what did she say? It's so good. I think I forgot. I think she was like, auditioning is like, you're just showing them that you already have what it takes to do the job. And like, they're the ones with the hard choice to make. Like, you already have like made it up. It was something like that, but it like changed the way I saw auditioning. Cause it was like, I know I can do this. Like, I just need to show y'all that I can do this. And when I think that like, you can sense that energy when someone walks in a room, like, I got this. It's just a matter of if y'all like me or not. And I think people notice that calmness and people notice. And it also helped that like, I wasn't a huge Broadway, like nerd kind of kid. So like, when these huge names were in the room up until that last audition, like, I didn't know who Michael Greif was. I didn't know who Stacey Mindich was, like, walking in there. So it was just like, I just had a dream. I was like, all I know is I saw Ben Platt on that stage and he was doing something magnificent. And I want the chance to do something as magnificent as that. I wasn't fazed by like, you know, the likelihood or the percentages or, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was just like, I know I'm born to do this. Be an actor, so to speak, not born to play this role, but I was like, I know I can play this role. And I think that that attitude and my faithfulness in the whole journey, in the terms of like, one, working on my craft, but also just knowing that like God is going to have me regardless. Like, that's what I think, that's what kept me so confident the whole time. And yeah, I mean, like, so looking back on it, I mean, it doesn't feel like it happened, especially now after the pandemic. But yeah, I mean, like, it did. And I made sure to journal after every single audition, because I still have the emails in my personal folder on Google, because I'm like, I don't ever want to forget the excitement I had. I don't ever want to forget how this began. I don't ever want to forget the fact that I can do anything I put my mind to. I have a picture of myself as Evan in my kitchen, because I'm like, anytime I feel like, yo, I can't do this, or this is too hard, or like, I don't know how this is going to turn out. Like, I have to remember, like, that was a 7-month journey from start to finish. Or what? March, April, May, June. Okay, that was a 4-month journey from start to finish. But 4 months is, I mean, that's a quarter of a year for one job. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm like, looking at that always makes me remember, like, if I did that, I can do literally anything. And yeah, I mean, that's the motto.
Absolutely. It's interesting too when you spoke about not being intimidated by the creative team. I can identify with that. When I first started, I'm not a theater. I wasn't a theater kid either. I didn't know anything. And when I got my start, I was auditioning at I guess a pretty popular theater in Chicago. I got my start in Chicago.
Oh, cool.
And not Chicago the musical, but Chicago the city.
Right. No. Yeah. I mean, it's a good theater city, so I was like,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah. And so when I'm walking in the room, if I had known who was behind the table, I might have been nervous. But I didn't know anyone, and I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna sing some Porgy and Bess. Let's do it. You know, I have classical background. I feel good about this. You know, let's go. And I wasn't nervous, but over time, and I'm curious if you're feeling this yet, and I hope you never do, because like I said, your energy and your spirit about everything is just so focused. It's really lovely to see. But over time, I started feeling the pressure, because I knew who was behind the table, or I knew they had won Tonys, or I knew what was riding on this. And I knew who was in the waiting room with me. And I'm like, there's no chance I'll book this. I just saw, such and such. I don't know. And I'm like, on top of, thinking, nah, they're going to go with a white girl, I'm also thinking, nah, they're going to go with someone that's already made a name for herself. And so those feelings start to shift, but it's so good to hear your story, because it reminds me that none of that really should matter, but we let it come into our mind space, and it like clouds all the stuff that really does matter.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen my friend who's done one Broadway show go beat out like Gat Matarazzo from Stranger Things for a role, and so like, and I've seen me in a, I don't even know the percentage of like 500 to 5, right? What is it? I should know that, but you was like, what, 5? Yeah, that's 100. I don't know, whatever. Anyways, I think that's a 0.05% just in that small group of me being chosen for this role. And then you add on the layer of me having black skin, looking at Broadway with no, like, the percentages, if I had broken it down like that, I would have been like, man, I'm never going to do this. But it's like, why waste time thinking about percentages when like you can put that time into like believing in yourself? And I think here's what Audra said. She said, the people behind the table want you to do your best.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I didn't think about it like that. Like, you think like, oh my God, this is so nerve-wracking. Like, oh, it's so intimidating. But like, those are your biggest cheerleaders. Like, the people behind the table are like, please make our job easy so we can cast you and be done with this. Because people don't love sitting in a room for 10, 12 hours a day. And so if you go in there and you can just shake off everything and shine like the diamond you are, in whatever capacity that might be, like, they want that from you. And so like, that's what calms me. And I think like I don't think I'll ever be nervous being in a room with people, because like, it's the same thing as when I meet celebrities. It's like, you're just a person. Like, backstage at Dear Evan Hansen, there were times when celebrities would come by, And I would meet them and I'd be like, oh, you're just a person. Like, you're not this like larger than life figure I see on the screens and stuff. Like, you're flesh and bone, just like me. And so like, whenever I've met someone famous, it just, it's never really fazed me because I'm like, okay, like, yeah, I get it. Like, scientifically, we're made of the same material. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just ended up where you're at right now, and I'm where I'm at right now. And so I think that will follow me the rest of my career, unless like, I think there's only like a few people, like if I walked in a room and Beyonce was in there, or I walked in a room and like Bruno Mars was in there, like that would probably get me a little rattled. But other than that, like, yeah, I just can't see it because like when I can see for my own eyes that we are literally just both human beings, and there's something about that for me that's just like, there's nothing to be nervous about. Like, we're on the same plane here, you know? And so I don't know. That's just always helped me.
I think it's going to get you far. I mean, you're already on your way so soon, so early in your career, which is so cool. So, and you're going to meet a lot of more famous people. So
yeah.
It's a good thing that you're not phased.
Ask me in like 5 years if I still feel that way. Let's
right. See. Barack Obama comes over and you're like, oh, he's just flesh and bone. I'm good. You just flesh and bone, man.
Yeah, no, he could be on that list. Honestly, I would be more pressed to meet Michelle than I would Barack.
I know. I'm so inspired by her. I feel like I wouldn't know what to say because I would feel like any words I had to say would not be worthy of her ears. I'm just like, my sentences are so minuscule and insignificant.
What I start to feel like when I meet people, I feel like there's people who get praised so much that I'm like, do I even take the time to like thank them and praise them because that's all they hear? Like, will that even like be unique in this experience at all? Or do I just treat them like a regular human? Like, I never know if I should be like, real quick, I just got like that. Most of the time it's like, I'll be normal with someone. And then like, if there's a moment, I'll be like, yo, by the way, like you created my favorite thing ever. And I just got to tell you, like, thank you so much. That's what I did when I met Lin-Manuel Miranda at a party for like the Fosse Verdon premiere. I like snuck in his booth and I was like, I really should not be doing this. But I was like, I can't not. You got a whole show about not throwing away your shot. I can't just not meet you tonight. We're like in 5 feet of each other. He's sitting down talking to people, and I'm like, hi, my name is Roman Banks. I'm in Dear Evan Hansen. I just really want to thank you. Like, you're the reason I'm in this room tonight, blah, 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 blah. I was like, yeah, like you are, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, can we just take a photo? Like, I didn't say it like that, but I was like, it would mean the world to me if like, we could get a photo or something. And he was like, yeah. And I look back at his face in the photo and he's like, like, he doesn't look mad, but he doesn't look like happy, you know? And I'm
oh man.
I don't know if that's just like what he thought looked cool in that photo, or if he like was like, who is this little boy trying to creep into my section at this party? I don't know. But like, would I change anything about it? Absolutely not. You know what I'm saying? Like that, because like you have to, man, like I feel like you have to pay homage to the people that like got you to where you were or are, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
You know? And
definitely.
like if you have a moment to like really make that connection, then make it. And like one day, he probably does not remember that at all. But maybe one day I can be like, can you tell me the truth behind this face? Like what you were feeling in this moment?
Yeah, what does this face mean? I was at a gala with some Lion King peeps, and
were you at the one Beyonce went to?
No, I missed that. Thank you. I missed that one. But no, Samuel L. Jackson was there along with like a bunch of people who have inspired me my whole life, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, but no. Samuel L. Jackson is the next table, right? So while everyone's mingling and everything, it's like happy hour. Jelani Remy and I work up the nerve to go over and ask him for a photo.
Oh my God.
And he's like, yeah, come on, you know. And, you know, we're taking a photo with Samuel L. Jackson, and his assistant took the photo. I think handler, assistant, I don't know who this woman was, but she had shaky hands. You can't recognize anyone in the photo.
Wait,
And then
really?
no one. We all looked like figures.
Oh,
and then she handed it back like, here you go. And me and Jelani are like, thank you. And he's walking away.
You're not going to look at the photo before you walk away. You're
Absolutely not.
You got it.
Yeah, I got it. It's done. Sandra took it, whatever her name was. And then we look at it. And we look at each other. And, you know, just all the curse words, all the profanity is like flowing. And that was that.
No.
That was gosh.
That's a good. See, I had my best friend with me. I brought my best friend with me to that party because you were allowed to take one guest. I was like, yo, come to New York. We're going to get you a suit. You better get ready for the flyest night of your life. Like, this is going to be this is different. We ain't never been to a party like this. It was true. Like, they were like gymnasts on hula hoops, hanging from the ceiling, slowly spinning around, pouring champagne and giving us glass. Like, it was a different type of. I was dancing next to Sam Rockwell and what is her name? Sam Rockwell, and she literally won the Emmy for playing Verdon, I believe.
Michelle Williams?
Yeah, I was dancing next to Michelle Williams and Sam Rockwell.
Wow.
Anthony Ramos and Jasmine, what's her name? Jane. Oh my God, I'm so bad.
Cephas Jones?
Yeah,
Jones?
Jasmine Cephas Jones. We're like to my right. I'm like, Lynn is over there in the corner. Like, it was crazy. I was like, yo, what's going on? But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just dance my heart out.
Cool.
Yeah. And it was just like, man, like, it was one of the best nights of my life. And so, and I knew my best friend was not gonna blow that photo.
Yeah.
Sadly, it was before night mode had been out, but you know, we edited it. We got the faces visible. We edited it pretty well. So
it sounds like a memorable night, but I bet what must have been more memorable was your Broadway debut.
That is true. Yeah. I could go on and on about that. I'm gonna let you just ask whatever. Because that was a day. Okay,
so you booked it. You moved to New York. You were kind of misplaced. You were in a hotel. Then you were on your auntie's couch, and now you have a place in Harlem, which I can totally identify with because when I moved to New York, I was subletting. I didn't really have a place yet, and it's just like you can't really settle because you're like in somebody else's bed, and you're like, I really just want to, I want to feel normal. I want to like go to the fridge and have breakfast and it not be weird,
Yes.
So you went through the rehearsal process, which if it's anything like your audition process, was it like super intense? I mean, covering 3 roles sounds super intense.
Yeah. What made it even more, I have nothing to base it off of besides like high school shows, but like what was crazy about it was that they were starting up the tour. Like I was replacing Ben Levi Ross, who went out to play Evan on the tour.
Okay.
So they were starting up the tour while I was rehearsing, which was cool because I had a lot of people to audition with. A lot of people to rehearse with who were like, we all wanted to know our lines. We all wanted to be
Adrian and I hope that you have enjoyed listening to the show thus far. If you'd like to hear the full interview and get access to the curtain call, head on over to 32barcut.com, where you can find a link to our Patreon page. There you will have exclusive access to the entire video collection and private RSS podcast feed, as well as other subscriber-only content. All right, that's all I got. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.